Fourth episode review. Playthings, Playmates. This one was weird. Your boy Icon with another Netflix television review for you. Going over a little Black Mirror. And before we get started, hit the notification bell, like it or subscribe to my YouTube channel. Check out my other reviews for the previous episode, the previous 3 episodes of Black Mirror. Help me get those watch time hours up, and I love you all dearly. And we reached 1,100 subscribers, so thank you all. Like I said, I love you guys, and if we're fortunate enough, if we're blessed enough to get monetized, like I promise I'll definitely, take my show on the road and try to give you guys bigger and better things, in like other places, other locations, and just try to expand on this whole world. So in this particular episode, yeah, there's a gentleman named Walker, and he walks into a convenience store. This is the year 2029 now in London. He walks into a convenience store. He tries to rob the place, and then he gets arrested. They take him in. They run his fingerprints, and then they find out that they've been searching for him because he's actually wanted for murder. So they bring him in. There's a cop and a psychiatrist that are talking to him. The cop is like overly aggressive for no reason, and it was honestly kind of annoying. But they were trying to talk to Walker. They said that, there was a body that we found like, many years ago. The body has your fingerprints all over it, and they just want to know like who was the person that you murdered and why did you do it? So he was just like, well, in order for me to do that, he said, he said, I don't know the guy's name. He said, I just known him as like Spunk or like Spud or something like that. Biff or Bid or something Bink or something like that. He was just like, I never actually knew his name, but he said, in order to find out, like, he said, but in order for me to tell you the story about what happened to him, he was like, I have to tell you the story from the beginning. So back in 1993, 94-ish, he was a video game programmer. He was a nerd, he was a geek, he was a loser, just like how nerds were perceived back then. But he was also, working on video games. And the funny thing is, had he stuck it out and not got wrapped up into all the shit he got wrapped up in, he would have basically been like the cool guy on campus, because as we all know, all those video game nerds from the 90s basically grew up to create like all the shit we see today, and now the nerds are the jocks, what I'm saying? And the jocks are considered toxic, so it's funny how like things change. But so he was a programmer, and there was the company that he worked for, there was this one specific guy. He was like a super genius, but he had went crazy for a little bit, and then he came back out into the world. I guess he got out of the loony bin, and he got his job back at the video game place. This guy wanted to talk to Walker. He was like, let me talk to Walker. So Walker goes into his office, and then he's just like, do you know why I brought you here? And then Walker was like, well, you want to show me a game? And he was like, I don't want to show you a game. I want to show you enlightenment. I want to show you the wild. So he shows him a game. He shows him a game that he made. But and mind you, this is 1994, like 94, 93. He shows him a video game, and he says that this isn't a video game. He said he created a virtual, he basically created a world. And he created a world where these characters called the Throngs, they exist in this world. But he said, so then Walker was like, oh, so basically it's The Sims. It's basically The Sims, like a pocket pet, like back in the 90s. Shout out if you know the pocket pet reference. But then he was like, no. And he was like, okay, how do I control these Throngs? He was like, why would you want to control? He's like, you don't control them. He said that the characters, like these Throng characters, he's like their biological digital intelligence. Like, they're real, they're free thinking. So I'm like, okay, so basically you created AI before AI was AI. So he created, he basically created a video game where the characters in the video game think for themselves and they're their own free beings. But they don't understand English, so they just communicate in sound. So he told him, he was like, this is what the world needs to obtain new consciousness or whatever the case may be. And then he gave the game to Walker and told him that he wanted him to study it. Or Walker stole it or something like that. So he takes the game. Walker goes home. He puts the game in his own computer system, and then he starts creating the Throng world. So I'm like, so basically this is the original open world with AI. That's what we're doing here. So he creates the world. The Throng it started with one egg. The egg hatched, and then the characters multiplied, and now the characters live in a world. And he's like on the computer. He's like watching them, observing them, trying to help them. he gets a knock at the door from the guy that he knows, the guy whose name was Bink or Biff or Blurt or whatever the hell the guy's name was. And he said that he was like, he wasn't a friend, he was more like an acquaintance, but the guy was like, oh, look, can I stay with you for a couple of weeks? And because the guy was a drug dealer, he basically sold LSD, he sold like acid, and he was just like, just let me stay here for a couple of weeks while I try to sell my product. Walker let him stay, and then what ended up happening was the guy got him hooked on acid. He started letting him take the acid, but the problem was when Walker started taking the acid, all of a sudden he said he was able to understand what the video game characters were saying, what the Throngs were saying. He was like, I could hear them. He said, I could understand, he said, I can understand their language. And I'm just like, no, you can't. I'm like, basically, because you're high as a kite, because you're high off the LSD, like, he thinks he can understand what he thinks, or maybe he could, like, who knows? So anyway, he starts listening to them, and they start, like talking to each other. He starts, upgrading the software to build a better world for them because now they're communicating back and forth. He plugs a camera and a microphone up to the computer so they can hear him, so they can talk to him, so he can talk back, etc. Now, he still has a job, and he was supposed to work on a specific game that the original guy that gave him the Throngs disc was creating. But they told his boss called him. He was like, yo, you got to finish this game by Thursday. So he left his apartment because he was in his apartment for 3 weeks playing with this Throng game. So he ends up going back to work because he still got a job. And then when he goes back to work, they told him, they said that, hey, you don't have to preview the game anymore because the guy that gave him the original Throngs video game, he said he went crazy again and they had to put him back in the loony bin, so they canceled the whole project. So then he was like, okay, and he went back home to go play with the Throngs. Now the guy that sold him the drugs, the acid, while Walker was at work, the guy went on he saw the computer that had the Throngs game on it. And when you're in the Throngs game, like I said, these are basically like living digital creatures. So instead of him like doing things like creating rivers for them, building houses for them, he just thought it was a regular funny game, and he started using the mouse to click and drag on like rocks, and he started dropping them on the characters and killing the characters. Then he started taking fire and started lighting their town on fire and started lighting their forest on fire. So he's basically destroying these digital, like living digital creatures. And he thought it was funny because he was just like, it's a game, like who cares? So Walker comes home, sees him destroying the Throng world, and then he freaks out. He busts the guy over the head with what I assume was a cigarette dish. Like he bust him over the head, and he basically offed the guy and took his life. And then, he put his body in a box, chopped it up, removed all evidence, and then he dumped it in a river somewhere. But I guess he didn't know how to wipe his own fingerprints because the police eventually ended up finding it. So that's how. So that answers the question of the body, like how, how. But then the cop was like, "But what was the guy's name?" And he was like, "I don't know." He was like, I said he said I never knew his actual name. I just knew him by like Biff or whatever. He's like, so so then after that, he was all like emotional, and then the Throngs characters were actually afraid because remember he had a camera plugged up to the computer and a microphone. So the Throngs characters saw him off his friend. So now they're scared. They're scared of him because they're like, oh, you're supposed to be the creator, the protector, but we just saw you create like acts of violence. Now the characters in the game are afraid. So in an effort for Walker to like prove himself to like his video game characters, he spent the rest of his life dedicating his life to them. And I'm like, he ain't go out on dates, like he ain't get no pussy, like. But the thing, and then like through like over the years, over the decades, he said that he was ignoring things that was going on in the outside world, and he was only focused on making the Throngs world better for the characters. But the problem was, and this is the part that I didn't get, they started showing a montage of him buying different types of software, different types of like technology to upgrade the Throngs, like the Throngs world. He was buying PlayStations, he was buying Nintendo Wii's, Nintendo Switches, Nintendo, he was buying PlayStation 3, 4, 5.5. Like he was buying all these different types of things just so he could upgrade, like his Throngs world. And the two things that didn't make sense to me, I was like, first of all, if you spent like the next 3-4 decades upgrading like this Throngs world, like trying to upgrade the software for this world. First of all, why you still got this little ass bullshit Apple Mac computer monitor on the screen? I'm like, you would have thought he would have upgraded to a bigger screen over the course of time. That was strike one. Strike two was, how the hell did you pay for all this shit? Because from the looks of the montage, you ain't been at, like, it was, at this point, it was like 2027. And I'm like, bro, you ain't been at work since 1993. Like, how are you paying for all this shit? I like, because the thing is, he said that he ignored the outside world and he just focused on the creating the Throng universe. I'm like, but were you still going to work? You know, I was like, were you still eating? Were you? And then he was just like, oh, I ignored the outside world altogether. Apparently not if you knew that the PlayStation 3 was out, so you can purchase it and you can like and you could take its parts to build your world. So there was a little capping on that, but anyway, so he creates the world, and then he was just like, now that the Throng universe has reached the ultimate peak of intelligence, he said that it's time to take it, to the next level. So he said that the Throng's characters, as they evolve, they wanted to study humans. So he created a device that he plugged into his brain so he can connect his brain to the computer, so the Throng's characters can feed off the information from his brain so they can learn more about how human biology and everything works. So then like the psychiatrist, she was just like, oh, so, and because then he said, I let you guys like arrest me on purpose. He said I've stayed off your radar since it's 2029. I've stayed off your radar since 1993. He said I wanted you to arrest me. Like, he said that was my plan because I have to deliver a message. And then, the psychiatrist, she was like, well, what's the message? And then he said, I need a pen and paper because I have to draw it. I can't tell you. So they give him a pen and paper. He basically draws a QR code. And then when he drew the QR code, he held the QR code up to the cameras that were in the room. And I'm like, why are y'all letting him do that? Like, why are you letting him do that? And he basically created like the world's most dangerous QR code. Like the cameras in the room scanned that QR code, and it started uploading like a program into every single electronic device on the planet. And then he was saying that the Throngs, their intelligence created this program so they can merge with human consciousness, so they can know what it feels like to be human, so they can be a part of us and join us. And then nobody knew what he was talking about. So then when the upload was complete, you just heard like this loud like harmonic noise, and then all the humans just dropped. Basically what happened was the Throngs created a QR code that when it was uploaded to every single server on the human world on the planet, because at that point, he had created billions of these characters, like billions and billions of these Throngs characters. He started out with one egg, and now he has like a whole population. That QR code uploaded every single Throng character in that game into every single human being on the planet. So now the Throngs went from being inside a computer to taking over human bodies. And I was like, holy shit. And I'm like, why did y'all let him scan, like, don't scan the QR code. Like, why did y'all let him do that? And I guess he was the only person whose body wasn't taken over by a Throng character, because they need one human host to study. And then at the end of the episode, after all the Throngs uploaded their consciousness into every single human on the planet, Walker stuck his hand out to help, them up so he can introduce them to, to like the human world. And then that's how I thought the episode ended. Thank you for tuning in. But then after, Walker extended his hand and then he went to help the guy up, then that's when the credits rolled. And usually with Netflix, as soon as the episode ends and once the credit rolls, you immediately get the prompt that says next episode in 15 seconds or whatever. The credits were rolling and that prompt wasn't coming. And I'm like, well, this is weird. Where's the prompt for the next episode? But then I was just like, well, wait a minute. If they're not showing the prompt yet for the next episode, maybe we're getting like a post-credit scene. Maybe there's going to be some sort of post-credit scene or something. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Let's see what this post-credit scene is all about. So instead of like a post-credit scene, right before the next episode, like feature popped up, they put a QR code on the screen for us to scan. And I was like, hell no, I'm not scanning that shit. Hell no. Not after, like, they had the audacity. They just showed us a QR code that uploaded video game characters into the consciousness of every human on the planet. And then y'all got the nerve to put a QR code at the end of the episode for people to scan. If you were somebody who watched this episode and you scanned that QR code, tell me what happened, because there is no way on God's green earth I'm scanning that shit. You kiss my ass. I'm sorry. But share questions, comments, and concerns. I mean, it was cool at the end. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. To get to the whole thing about him using that QR code that the Throngs created so the Throngs can upload themselves into human bodies. I thought that was like a cool spin on it at the end. I kind of just felt like a lot of that episode, like maybe like 15, 20 minutes of that episode, we didn't need like 15, 20 minutes that could have been shaved down. We could have got to that a little bit quicker, but it was still a good episode with a crazy ending. But share your questions, comments, and concerns down below, and let's talk about it. Let me know what you thought about this particular episode of Black Mirror Playthings, because now we're their playthings. And, you know, they said, let's talk about it in the comments section. 2 episodes to go as we conclude Black Mirror Season 7. Check out my other reviews because I got the other episodes of Black Mirror up on my channel. I'm probably going to do the Thunderbolts at some point, and then I'm going to stream a little more WWE 2K for all of you guys. And DC-wise, we're waiting for that Superman. So, so just get on board for that. And like I said, we'll review all this goodness and everything else in between. So that was it, guys. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, for the love of God, do not scan the QR codes, people. Until then, we're out this